Welcome to 1,001 Ways to Cope with Stress. I am Professor Kinshasa Shabaka, and we have an exceptional guest with us tonight in the name of Dr. Frederick Monderson. Welcome, Dr. Monderson.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Dr. Monderson is a prolific writer and author. He has written over 1,000 articles, 30 books, and a profound set, a trilogy at this point, on Obama and his reign in office. And I want, with no delay whatsoever, to have you hear from him exactly his contribution. Welcome again.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Frederick Monderson, Dr. Fred Monderson. I'm here to say, among other things, discuss some of my books on President Obama. But it was interesting, I was asked to explain this photograph that sits behind my seat, that stands behind my seat. It is interesting, as I look at it, it is so apropos Obama. When I look at this photograph, if you look close up, you will see an entire history of our people. Here we are arriving in slave ships across the Atlantic Ocean, pardon me. We are being sold on the auction block, and naturally the chains that chronicle our history. Good old Whittling Lynch, that master manipulator of our people. We're in the cotton fields, picking cotton, King Cotton, we made King Cotton. We're pondering at the fireside. We fought to defend America in every war, from the French and Indian Wars to today, Afghanistan. Here we have a sister getting solace from the Holy Bible. Whatever has been said, we are Christians, and Christianity is the only thing, as we were transiting that horrible experience of slavery, slave trade, slavery, and the machinations of the post-slavery era. Langston Hughes said, in the Congo, they cut off our hands, but in Texas, they hung us. And then that great movie with Denzel Washington, The Great Debaters, the young man said, in Texas, they lynched niggers. Well, here is some evidence of that. We have fought, as I said, in all of the great wars of America. And what this image seems to indicate is that not only will we fight for America, but we will fight to defend ourselves. And as we've struggled through, never losing sight of Marcus Garvey's image of Africa, the red, black, and green. We were jailed, and our minds were imprisoned. But we struggled, and we taught our children to read, educate ourselves, be familiar with the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And as Dr. King taught us, we are a man. I am a man. Reverend Sharpton said, no justice, no peace. And Malcolm had said, we must struggle by any means necessary. Dr. King said, I have seen the promised land. The promised land, as Jesse Jackson said on January of 2009, Barack Obama was the best thing that the civil rights movement had to offer. But guess what? If Barack Obama was the best thing that we had, and he was treated in such a manner in this nation, and we see all of the reverberations even today on this historic evening October 19th, as the final debate is taking place. But we persevered because we can. Luke 19 said, I give you power to stand on scorpions, snakes, and all kinds of vermin. We fought in all the wars. The Red Tail were famous Tuskegee airmen who fought in World War II. Unquestionably, this is a Vietnam veteran returning home. As W. Boys said, we fought abroad and we come back fighting. And we will fight. Let it not be misunderstood. But we sent our children to school to study law, science, math, and all the things that will elevate them. And it's interesting, we've marched on Washington because we had a message to deliver. But it is interesting, before I take my seat, as we reflect back upon the slave ships that had embarked through the door of no return, I like to remind you of the runaway slave Samuel Carson, who opened the door of return on August 1st, 1998. Who was Samuel Carson? He was an enslaved African in South Carolina who ran away in 1844, joined the U.S. Navy, fought in the Mexican War, died, and was buried in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. And his bones were discovered by the U.S. Navy in 1996. And from 1996 to 1998, a number of strategies were undertaken to determine what to do with his bones. And finally, it was decided that he should be repatriated to Ghana, West Africa, to create a site of pilgrimage where African Americans seeking their heritage can first embark in Ghana and then ultimately wherever if they want to find their heritage. After all, look at all the great presidents. Reagan, Carter, everyone took pride in their European heritage. What's wrong with our African people finding where they come from and identifying with Africa? Remember, in August 1, 1998, the president of Ghana had said that Africa's greatest asset is the African American in this country. And whether it was Marcus Garvey or Booker T. Washington or W.B. Du Bois, who emphasized the significance of Pan-Africanism wherever we are. As Malcolm said, we're not discriminated against because we're Christians or Muslims or Jews or whatever. We're discriminated because we are sons and daughters of Africa. And we must understand that we must stand together. Sonny Carson would say, let none of us be killed by another. We must stand together. We must educate ourselves. We must uplift ourselves. And we have a terrific role model in Barack Obama and his wife, Michelle.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Monderson. So we can see that this man is so prolific in his knowledge that he can take a painting which he was seeing for the first time tonight and chronicle the entire history of our people here in this country and in Africa. So we thank you for that. And we want now to get to the matter of, we want to first emphasize that Dr. Monderson was also a vet. And he was wounded at war, but has...
No, I didn't.
But he has quite a story to tell about his relationship to this country in terms of the war. He is Guyanese, and if you could just tell us a little bit about how you first started in your life, how this all came about, that you are such a prolific writer. Can you share some of that with us?
Well, like most people, I'm an immigrant, if I may so say, but I'm an American citizen. I came to America in 1968 as a young man seeking an education, and because I was raised by my grandmother, I encountered many obstacles, but I persevered because I never wanted grandmother to feel that I had become a failure in my quest. And it's been a long and dusty road suffice to say, I got an education and I'm here. I'm rarely here this evening to speak about my work about President Barack Obama. Back in 2004, I was in DC and I saw a clip in the newspaper that said at that time, after he had been nominated to represent the Democratic Party in the national election, that at that time, before the election, that there were 50 books written about Barack Obama that were all negative. And I was so alarmed. So I wrote this piece, because I write for a newspaper, the Daily Challenger, one of the 4 black dailies in the country. That's located in Brooklyn. And from there, I began writing because I considered Barack Obama to be a black man under attack. And in essence, I sort of became, quote unquote, the sort of Obama, because I took it upon myself to respond to every single attack. Everyone who had something disparaging to say about the president, I had something to speak about.
And defended him.
I defended him without question. So I wrote this book called, okay, in answer to the first question, was Obama fit and ready to lead? I wrote a book called Obama Fit, Ready to Lead. But I didn't just stop there. I ended up writing, at the end of the first term of office, I ended up writing this book called Barack Obama, Master of Washington, D.C. And in essence, it has a whole number of, actually there were, let's see, there were 75 chapters of issues that confronted Mr. Obama, as well as my assessment of the man, his how he responded to the challenges and the responsibilities of his office and so forth and so on. And as destiny would have it, he was re-elected in 2012, and from that time I wrote the third book, which is called Obama, Master and Commander. I sort of piggyback upon an old movie, but essentially these 2 books were not simply chronicles of Mr. Obama's time in office, but also showcasing the architecture, the monuments, and the significant landscape of Washington, D.C. So if you never get to Washington, D.C., and you want to know what's in that wonderful city, these 2 books will help you. Well, along the way, I ended up writing my 4th book, which has not fully been released, but it is called Obama, The Journey Completed, because essentially his task is over as we contemplate, let us say, the winner of tonight's debate and who will become his successor. Obama, The Journey Completed, never promised a rose garden. In fact, it's nothing but a gift of roses from Obama to the people of the United States.
Amen.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Now, it is such an incredible contribution that you're making. You were like, and you are like, his defender. It's like so many negative things have been said, but for every negative thing, you have counteracted it with something very positive he's done. We know that the Republican dynasty, if you want to call it that, has done everything to block his message, to block the equality that he has been seeking for all people, not just his people. And they have tried to cripple him, to shorten his term, to shorten the preservation of his knowledge and his contribution. So we're grateful to you for that, because these are 4 books that we know register the accomplishments of Obama, and we thank you for that. We'd like also just to ask you, what do you see as, I'm getting back to your history, some of the things that made you so determined to write these books. You have been involved in the compilation of his journey, but I would like to know a little bit about the compilation of your journey. You are a veteran, you were wounded in the war, yet you came back and you have made such utter contributions. Can you share a little of that with us? Your motivation, the strength that you show in terms of what's made this possible.
I seldom speak about my experience in the military, but suffice to say, I am a Vietnam veteran with 210% disability. And one day I was sitting in my hospital and I was introduced to a young lady who gave a lecture on writing. And as I was battling some of my demons, she said to me, I see that you like to read and write. I said, yes, my grandmother had insisted that I do these things as a young man. She says, you should write as if your life depended on it. And henceforth, I began writing and writing and writing. And I find that the challenges that Mr. Obama was exposed to was a tremendous catalyst in helping me to overcome some of my problems. You know, I was having flashbacks, I was having nightmares, I was having sweats, I was having hyper-vigilance, a whole lot of things that bothered me. And the effort to channel my energy in defense of this great man in some respects helped me to overcome and cope with my maladies.
It was very
So in a way, I was into that health experience thanks to him.
Isn't that
after a while, I looked forward to responding to the many things that were unfolding. Mr. Obama there was a writer of the New York Times who characterized Mr. Obama as greatest American president ever. And it's unfortunate that the people who he had to contend with, ultimately he said, I know that politics is a contact sport, rather than, you know, go on the, as someone had said, firing on the rebels' camp. It's unfortunate that the Republicans who had begun stirring the pot, and if you probably have heard of this cliche, be careful of what you pray for. The Republicans prayed and looked to the heavens, and lo and behold, Donald Trump descended.
Wow!
So they got what they prayed for. Now they're forced to deal with the gift they asked for, and as such, I don't need to get into the birth thing. I suffered like so many of our people with the humiliation encountered through the birth experience, and so many other things. But our leader had grace under pressure. He had nobility of spirit, and he was able to have great faith in his religious beliefs. You see, one of the conundrums that he had to deal with is whether he was Christian or Muslim. It's interesting that in July of this year, I was in Florida, sitting in the poolside. We went to Disney, and this couple came up and wanted to share our seat. I had no objections, it's a big table. But the first thing I heard this lady said to her husband is that Obama is a Muslim. I didn't say anything, I listened. Then he said to her, oh yes, every time he goes to a Christian church, he orders the people to cover all the images. Well, I think they had said enough. And I said, excuse me? and it took him down this dusty road.
Uh-oh.
So finally the guy said,
Here
what's
goes
the
some
name?
history.
So he said, what's the name of your book? I need to read about it. I said, let me tell you what has happened. And it is amazing and it's shameful that in this day and age, that there can be people who can be so misled. I mean, here you accuse a guy of sitting and listening to a Christian minister for 20 years. You accuse him of being one thing, and then you turn around for convenience sake and accuse him of being a Muslim. For what reason? And it's
Not to
interesting.
say that there's anything wrong with being a Muslim.
Of
It's just that
course
he was
not. Of course not. But it's a part of the big lie. And why is it? I mean, Senator Mitch McConnell stated very blatantly and racist, as I was said on Piers Morgan, CNN. There was he said, I intend to make Barack Obama a one-term president. And then even more important, even more disgusting and shameful, in one of the debates that they had, the discussions about government business, this same McConnell came out, and we've come to recognize the use of code words and images and signs. And he made this disgusting thumbs up signal to the photographers, which in fact he was signaling his colleagues that I got the nigger in the White House. Well, we understood all of that. But even more hurtful was Dr. Ben Carson in his attack upon President Obama, indicating that the Affordable Care Act, which they misnomered Obamacare, was worse than slavery. And what he did, and what he failed to realize, if Jesse Jackson had said that Obama was the best that we could, that the civil rights movement could offer, if he was castigated, characterized as a nigger, what about Dr. Ben Carson? Because when he gets up there and he speaks to these Heritage Foundation type crowds, there would be at least one heckler in the midst who would say, well, the nigger doctor has spoken. So he needs to understand that if Barack Obama is a nigger, so is he. But it's unfortunate because this gentleman is engaged in this, what is called the Petrine syndrome, okay, which is the denial of the intellect and the noble spirit that Obama possesses. And what is he doing it for? The 30 pieces of silver that Judas Iscariot betrayed Christ for is out there. But what will happen is ultimately he will go by way of the dodo bird as Michael Steele, Alan West, and the rest of them, who were nothing but spooks who stood by the door but could not enter in the deep recesses of that temple of Republicandom, because it's not about African people. It is about finance and white supremacy. And our man, Barack Obama, the significance of him and the challenges he faced. Why? Because he was able to unlock the secrets. And now, in many, many, many respects, he's freed us. Okay? We can't go back. So never mind who says what. We are moving forward.
Amen.
We have seen the promised land that Dr. King prophesied.
Amen.
And now, as Marcus Garvey has said, Marcus Garvey was that great leader who, in the early decades of the 20th century, after he was wrongfully imprisoned and he was manacled on his way to Atlanta Federal Prison, he said, "You have caged the lion, but the cubs are running free out there. And Obama has helped to empower cubs that will move our people forward for centuries to come. Never mind these naysayers out there. Let them know that we have fought to defend America. Wow. And we will always fight to defend America, to live out the true meaning of its creed.
Absolutely. Fantastic. You know, this last part that you were talking about reminds me so humbly of something that Michelle Obama said. And that is, when they go low, we go high. I thank you so much, Dr. Monderson, for your contribution to the wealth of knowledge of a nation and to the consciousness raising of our people and all people, because all of us need to have our consciousness raised. I thank you. And I thank you for listening to 1,001 Ways to Cope with Stress. I'd like to just add that we are grateful for our sponsors this evening. We have New York Global Biz. We also have, as one of our sponsors, the 5-Spot Armstead Exchange, in whose venue we are having our taping done.
And Mr. Larry Walker.
And Mr. Larry Walker, the author of this
work.
I hadn't forgotten him. As a matter of fact, you centerpieced him, don't you remember?
Yes.
Larry Walker, whose outstanding works of art can be seen on YouTube. And in addition, I want to also just thank the Rain International Westside Printing, who is also a sponsor. And we thank you so much for participating with us, and we hope you will join us again next time for 1,001 Ways to Cope with Stress. That would be fine. I'll just put it on. Can you come forward so we can?
Dr. Monderson, I heard you refer to the transition from when you began writing, and I'm still a little baffled because there's a lot of books that you've written prior to the President Barack Obama. I understand you are a professor, okay? So I know that there's some educational background there that I'd like to have you explain, if you'd be so kind.
Well, thank you for that question. I am a product of the City University of New York. Many years ago, when I first enrolled in New York City Technical College, at that time it was called New York City Community College, I was fortunate to meet a gentleman called Dr. Leonard James. And somehow or the other, he fell in love with me. He saw talent that over a 40-year period, he encouraged to blossom and bloom. He was my friend, my mentor. He hired me. We exchanged ideas over these 4 decades. And he's the one who actually, as an African historian, and my second master's was in African history. Actually, my first master's, my second master's was public administration. My third master's was school administration and supervision.
You're also an Egyptologist. We haven't gone into the pyramids with you yet. But
Wow.
I can tell you now that this is not the end of our chapters with Dr. Monderson. We plan to do a series. So that's why I didn't try to get into everything, because you are so prolific, there's no way in the world we could cover you in 28 minutes. All right, was there any other point? Did anyone else have a question they'd like to ask of Dr. Monderson?
I just would like to, only because of what the information I'm trying to get about the doctor right now.
We haven't gone into we could cover you in 28 minutes. All right, was there any other question they'd like to ask of Dr. Monderson?
I just would like to, only the information I'm trying to get about the doctor right now. Because of what the information
we could cover you in 28 minutes. All right, was there any other question they'd like to ask of Dr. Monderson?
I just information I'm trying to get about the doctor right now. I'd like to only because of what the
All right, was there any other we could cover you in 28 minutes?
about the doctor right now. Information I'm trying to get like to only
Dr. Monderson?
I just
Question they'd like to ask of Dr. All right, was there any other we could cover you in 28 minutes?
about the doctor right now. Because of what the information I'm trying to get like to only
Question they'd like to ask of Dr.
Open forum. And these gentlemen, James, Ben, Clark, are the guiding lights who sort of look over my shoulder and keep, as the wind beneath my sails, keep helping me to serve our people. I was instructed recently to continue the work that I'm doing of educating our people. You know, of those 1,000 pieces I had written for the newspaper,
Yes.
they never paid me a dime. I was simply writing so that our people would have knowledge.
But you will be richly rewarded for
Oh
that.
yes, one day.
My last question is that I understand you have a number of degrees and you have a number of books that you've written.
Yeah.
Okay, can you just give us a little bit of that and I'm through.
Well, I made education a career. So like I started to spend 7 years in college. I spent 24. And if I'm permitted to give you an analogy, now if you play baseball and you hit the ball 3 times, you're considered a 300 hitter, and you go to the Hall of Fame. In academia, you can get a doctorate with 200 credits. I stopped counting at 400. So it gives you an indication of how I devoted my years. And again, it's thanks to grandmother who raised me. You know, my grandmother loved words, you know. She said, when I die, I want you to speak big words over me. So I went to college to learn big words.
I love it.
And so forth.
And so in effect, in 74 when you started going to school, you had left the Vietnam War, you were still a disabled vet, and yet at the same time you were doing a lot of study.
Well, it was a number. Well, actually, I was in Foxhole in Vietnam, and I said, if I ever get out of here, I'm going to go to Congress. I never was able to get to Congress because I ended up having a family and so forth and so on.
But all your books are in the Library of Congress.
Oh, yes.
So you've gotten to Congress. You have gotten to Congress.
Well, presently I have, I think 77 Library of Congress certificates. So, you know, that's what I've devoted my life to, that type of upliftment. And Barack Obama certainly helped me in coming to his aid.
That's wonderful. Well, let us give this gentleman a hand. We are so grateful to you for all that you do for us.
And I'm
Thank
so
you.
thankful for you having me here this evening.
Oh, thank you again.
Okay.
And thank you again for joining us in 1,001 ways to cope with stress. Would you say this man has learned how to deal with stress in a very new special way? Thank you again, sir.
Okay, buddy.
Give me your
Thank you.
hand.
Oh, yes, sister. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir.
Oh.
Okay.